series of disaster preparedness seminars and workshops. Because we're in California, we're going to do earthquakes first. We like feedback. We like hearing from you all. So if you all don't mind, with a show of hands, how many of you all have been in an earthquake before? Raise your hand.
I'd like to hear some feedback from people who've been in earthquakes.
Hear
about your experience. I want to hear some experiences of folks that have been through it. So, and one of the things, just one second, sir.
Sorry.
Thank you. One of the things we want to be very clear on today, we're going to do a broad overview. There's a lot of stuff up here. We break it into 3 different phases. Chay's going to tell you about those 3 different phases of the particular training. We don't expect you to walk out of here knowing everything you need to know and being completely prepared, right? Because you need a series of these, and our position is you perform like you train. When we teach martial arts and we teach things of that nature, we teach that repetition is the thing that gives you unconscious competence. Because under stress and duress, you lose a lot of competence because of adrenaline dumps, cortisol dumps, those types of things. It affects how your brain functions. So for people who this information is new to, we don't expect you to walk out of here and know everything it is you need to know today, but it's a beginning point. We will be releasing videos. This video will be up in circulation on the CRC Community Ready For page. But we will be releasing videos on these same subjects that will be more compartmentalized. We will be doing more workshops that are more compartmentalized. In approximately 2 weeks, we should have the packs as we see them, the ideal pack set up to sell on the site. But right now, we're going to give you an overview, so just be clear that you're going to get a lot of information. You will be able to go back and review. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask. All right? So, now I want to hear some feedback from people who've been in earthquakes.
Well, I was in the Big Loma Crater earthquake in 1989, I think it was, in Santa Cruz. And, I mean, I was much, much younger, but when I think back, we were so unprepared. And the community seemed really unprepared, and the city. And just like there were all these lines for people to get water, and so, I mean, it was really frightening. It was a huge, huge earthquake, and we were just totally unprepared, like living our lives like nothing would ever happen to us, you know. So, yeah. I think preparedness is
critical.
It's just, yeah, it's critical.
Absolutely.
Sum it up, I think, complacency is the villain, the enemy.
I agree. Anybody else experiences they want to share? Whether they were prepared, unprepared, any particulars about what you remember about that experience?
I was like 1.5 in the 89 earthquake, but I remember my mom screaming at my grandma to get up in the windows. And learning in school, you know, they teach you like go under a table and like go into the doorways. But I'm really curious on how much of that is still true. Because that's what I learned as a kid, growing up in the city, but I don't even have no idea what's relevant anymore.
Right on. And we will get into that. What they used to tell you about doorways is not the best bet. Back then, the construction of houses was different. So the door frames were sturdier. Nowadays, that's not the case. So most experts will say, do not get in the doorway, right? And then you also put yourself in jeopardy of swinging doors. So now, the conventional wisdom, no doorways, under a table, under some structure, particularly tables, desks, things of that nature, and hold on. So, anymore? Yes.
So is that accurate also in, like, if you're living in older housing? Because, like, most of the housing in Oakland is, like, older.
This is what I would say, that it is conditional based on the housing, but, once again, you perform like you train. So, because it could, you are risking the possibility of under stress and duress, doing what you've done over and over and over, and you might be in a house at that time with weak door frames. It's just good practice to abandon it altogether and train yourself to not do it.
Oh, back to the 89 real quick.
Yes, thank you.
I was a photojournalist at the time, and so even though all I felt was some shaking watching it, I was outside, I watched a tree, I got somebody on a motorcycle to drive me over to the marina and looked at that, which was, 4 or 5 story buildings just completely collapsed. So that was reality.
Yeah.
It wasn't much over here except the freeways, of course.
I was in a pretty small magnitude earthquake on the Central Coast, and it happened on a weekend. And I went back into work at a college textbook store, and all the books were completely off the shelf. And so, I guess my main experience from that was just if we had been at work during that time, it really the weight of the textbooks really could have hurt someone or worse. And so just things that I didn't expect to be a hazard, became hazardous.
And be clear, there's no perfect set of circumstances, honestly. In all of our training, we're very clear that we have no magic solutions. We can give you the tools and the principles that give you a better opportunity. A lot of this in an ideal world, we have different size packs that we talk about, right? So it's individual, 2-person, household that would be 4 or 5 people. But then there are communities that organize with community kits. So they may have it at a church, a community center, things of that nature that can feed 40, 50, 60 people. So the key is to be as prepared as possible. The nature of an earthquake is unpredictable, and none of these structures are completely safe. And so I just want to always be clear that there is no magic solution. The best you can do is have the principles and assess your environment when you walk in. If this was to happen, what would I do? Where would I go? What are my different avenues to safety? So I'm going to turn this over primarily to Che. All right, so I'm going to tag team with Che. But Che's going to lead us on this discussion.
Okay, so there are 3 basic steps in earthquake preparedness. The first step is preparation, and that's before. The next step is during, so it's survival and safety. And the third step is the aftermath and recovery. Today we're going to deal with the most basic information for the first 72 hours. A lot of experts say that at the very minimum, you should have enough items available on hand for 3 days, for 72 hours. So we'll use that as a starting point, and obviously, how Tura said, the goal is to get ourselves more prepared than that. For today, we're going to start there. Dealing with preparation, there are 2 main steps that we're going to deal with, and that is getting the items you need and also creating a plan for yourself or for your family, right? A lot of folks are recommending that you use buckets for the emergency kit in your home, and the reason being is the buckets will help you secure your items, keep them dry, keep them safe. You can stack them, as opposed to a backpack or a bag where they can be smashed or crushed, what have you. At the same time, these buckets can double as a toilet with the sanitation bags and the chemicals, because a lot of times after an earthquake, the water lines can be damaged, or you might not be in your home. So what I'm going to do is go through some of the main supplies that experts say like I said again, as a bare minimum you should have in your preparedness kit. Right. First thing.
One of the things I want to interject right there, it's very important. So when you do research on these things, in every category, there's multiple suppliers. And everybody's going to tell you that their thing is better than the other thing. The key thing is to understand the principle that you're attempting to facilitate. If you understand the principle that you're attempting to facilitate, which is what Shay's going to go through. Once again, we're going to deal heavily in principle, right? So even the packs that we'll be showing you how they're packed, what's in them is more based on you knowing what needs to be in them than saying this is the brand you should get, right? Now, not saying this is not the brand you should get, right? But the point is that if you understand the concept and the principle that you're attempting to facilitate, you'll figure out the rest.
First of all, water. Water is the major item that we would use in a disaster or any kind of emergency. Without water, you can't live without water, right? How Crc'S said, there are different methods. If you go to survival centers, they have pre-packs of water that have a 5-year shelf life. And the reason why they have them in small packs individually is because you can break them up, you can disperse them amongst your family. You can get canned water. We're not saying you should not get the regular bottled waters. The downside with the bottled waters is they have only around a 1-year shelf life. So if you put some small bottled waters in your emergency kit, you have to make sure on a regular basis you rotate them out. Whereas for this kit, this is like a basic kit. If you put some in that have a longer shelf life, you can pretty much just let it be. And of course, on your kit, you want to write the date that you put them in there, so when it gets close to 5 years, you recycle them out. Question?
So what happens to the water after 1 year? Is it just plastic leaches into it?
Well, with water, bacteria will start building up. So, and of course, water's going to last in general longer than juices and that kind of thing. But even water, after a while, it becomes undrinkable. That is a good question too, because if you have water that you feel has gone past its shelf life, there are ways to purify the water. You have kits that can purify water, and you have tablets that you can put in the water to kill bacteria and even to make the water not taste so bad.
And I think that is one of the things that you're looking for when you get water filtration systems. Some will kill viruses or filter viruses, and some won't. Some will filter out certain types of bacteria, so when you do, know what you're getting, right? Because this is a straw, filtration straw, right? Which you can keep in your pocket, you can have in a smaller pack. It's not gonna do as well as this. It's definitely not gonna do as well as this. Did we bring the big tank?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one right here.
Which is the big tank?
Yeah.
Water. Yeah, let's break that one down. That's not gonna filter as much as this, right? So the bigger the filter, the better, actually. But once again, we're talking principles. So when you're looking for these filtration systems, you want to find out what level of filtration it does. Because you want the highest level, but that might not always be possible.
No question, please.
Yes, I know it's more of a comment. I know that another way to make water safe for drinking is to heat it or boil it.
That's a good point. If you have water and you are not sure if the water is safe to drink, and maybe you do not have the tablets to purify the water, if you boil the water, that will help kill viruses. Now, at the same time, too, boiling water is not the same as filtering it. If you boil the water, you may kill certain viruses, but there are other things that are not being filtered out. But what he said is correct, that is an option, if you have the ability to heat the water up.
Yeah.
The next thing after water, of course, is food. A lot of times in the basic kits, what they will have is just the freeze-dried, 5-year shelf life bars, energy bars that you calories. Obviously, this is not delicious, right? Obviously, it's something you want to eat all the time. However, if you have no food, you can survive on these for a couple of days. There are other items that are the same. They will have a 5-year shelf life, but they're meals. And all you have to do is add hot water. You can pull this off, pour the hot water in the bag, let it steep for a little while, and this obviously is a better option than this. A lot of times, Arturo said, we gotta follow principle. Your kit will look a little different depending on your personal situation. If you have children, you have to factor that in.
That's one important thing about some of these meals. And as Chase said, one of the things that I think is important is your particular circumstance, right? So if you have children, if you have people around that might not be so okay with something that's bland, morale is important. Morale is important, keeping people's spirits up. So something that's tastier might go a long way towards keeping people's spirits up, keeping everybody in a good mindset. Some of these have, like this particular company has a wide range of brands. So they have gluten-free, they have vegetarian, and they have meat products. So, but it's clearly labeled on the box which one it is. So whatever your preference is, there's usually a company that will suit that.
And this is an example of the kind of box it will come in, right? So they have different types.
Question about water.
Please.
Two things really quick. I've been researching water running at some for myself at night. We're like a group of 7 little apartments. I've been researching that brand, and I realize you're saying it's not about the brand, but a lot of the comments say that that lid leaks, and already my neighbor has it, and his lid is already leaking.
On this one?
That brand, Reliance.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's that particular one.
Okay.
So if it were to fall over, all of that water would go out the tap. So I guess I'm needing help, like what might be a better brand. And the second question about water is I've been researching these big 55-gallon ones, and I'm just wondering, they're very expensive. And I'm wondering, where would I get information about it to do it yourself? Like, how could I get something reused, but have information about how to make sure it's safe? Like to, put the right amount of bleach in to make sure it's safe.
So not sure on where you can get do-it-yourself kits for this, but we live in an internet age, so I'm sure if you type it in, you can figure that out. But even with a brand like this, we aren't familiar with that particular problem of it leaking, but once again, you can wrap it in plastic. You can do different things to seal it. So, and I appreciate that information, and that's once again why these rooms are good, right? Because we don't come to the table saying we know everything that there is to know about this, because there's a lot to know. So thank you for that information. Do you have any information on what the better brands would be that don't leak?
I don't. I was looking online, and this brand is like the most popular
Yes.
brand. So I came here at like needing help.
Right.
With that, I don't know.
And so thank you for that question. We will do further research and try to find an answer to that, because this is the most available brand. This is the most widely used brand. So everywhere we look, this is the one that's there. So we will try to find out, and we will, once again, you can, if you feel like it's gonna leak, there's a few things. One is that you always wanna make sure that you keep these things in secure position. So even we have some of the furniture straps. There's certain things like this that you might think will fall over. You may wanna strap it in. You may wanna duct tape it to a particular position wherever it is located, so in the case of an earthquake, it doesn't fall over and it doesn't leak. So sometimes that is because there might not be a better brand. We don't know. And I'm not saying there's not, but in the event that there's not, once again, figure out that's the thing. And remember what we said, we're attempting to facilitate principle, right? We're attempting to facilitate principle. So the principle is what? We don't want to lose water. We know that this brand has been said to leak. So then what can we do to impact that or affect that? Tape it up. Tape it up on the wall, right? If you know you're not going to use this except in the case of an emergency, you can wrap it in plastic and duct tape the plastic. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
much water per person per day would you estimate should be stored?
What they say is during a major disaster, the average person uses 2 gallons of water a day. And so that's for cooking, cleaning, bathing, washing dishes. So if you have a family of 4 people, and 1 to 2 gallons a day, that's a lot of water. So that's why there are other ways to secure water, whereas in these small kits, this is just a basic 72 hours. Another thing for your question with the seal, a lot of times you will hear experts say, when you get these things, you want to try them out. That's why we have these workshops. So, like for example, if I got camping gear and just have the camping gear sitting there, then I don't really know what I have. But if I get some camping gear and go try it out, then I'm going to find out what works best, what doesn't. So this is a working process, and a lot of times actually getting involved in it'll help you familiarize yourself with what's best and what's not best.
Because based on what you just said, we're going to go kick this thing around. We're going to go kick it around. We're going to see if it leaks. So next time we have one of these, we can be like, they were wrong or they were absolutely right. It leaks.
Well, I think where it was leaking, and I don't know if it was 100% of them, but where my neighbors is already leaking because around the gasket where you pour it out.
It would make sense. That would make sense. One more thing about that. One more thing I want to say. This is a larger filtration system, right? So these charcoal filters, they're going to filter out most bacteria, most viruses. So this is good to have around, even in unison with this. Even with this, because you can take water that might not be so clean and you can put it in this and it can be used for bathing, right? Because those are the distinctions you have to make also. That the water you use for bathing doesn't need to be as clean as the water you drink, right? So those are the types of principles you need to be operating by.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, sir. Thank you.
I just want to ask, what, according to your what is the best place in the house or in an apartment to keep the keys hanging? Some people think that it's better to keep it in the backyard, just in case you are inside of the house and you make your way out, you have access to the keys. Do you think that's the best?
Yes.
That's a very good question. As a matter of fact, in a little while, we're going to get something similar, but we'll deal with that right now. You may not be home when an earthquake strikes. So this same kit that you would put in a bucket for in your home, and in your home, it should be in a closet, in a garage, somewhere where it's safe. You should make sure that it's somewhere where folks are not going to put stuff on top of it, where it's readily available. But this same kit that I have in here can be put in a backpack or a bag for your car. You should have a kit in your place of business. You should have a kit, a backpack in your trunk of your car. Wherever you are, most of the time, you should have kits there. That way, if you can't get the one out your house, you still are covered.
Indeed. This is the 2-person kit, right? This typically would take care of 2 people. Now, remember, they may say 2 people, you may eat a lot. Right? So it might just really be for 1 person, or you might eat less. So it might last you way longer than what is estimated. So just be clear on those things. It's good to get some of this stuff and play around with it, right? So when you get these kits, it's good to break one of those kits open and say, listen, for the next 3 days, we're in disaster mode. Let's see how it works. Because once again, certain things you don't know till you know. That's just the reality. This is a kit that's supposed to feed 5, take care of 5 people. Once again, same principle. So as Chase said, you want to have multiple kits in different places depending on your circumstances. Outside for your home is typically a good place though, because in any place that's an open area that's not likely to have debris or anything like that fall on, right? They say in a lot of the earthquakes that we have now, because a lot of things are structurally sounder, that it's not falling structures that hurt and kill people as much as they used to. It's debris and things of that nature. So typically a lot of the houses that we have are sturdy enough to things not fall and crush it. But it is better to have it in an open area where that's less likely. Yes. So I see a few hands. One here, one.
About where you keep your kids, I was wondering about garages with the electric shut. Our garage is inaccessible except for the button, the electric button. Is there a way to open your garage when the power's on?
A lot of times during an earthquake, the electricity will shut off. So you want to think about those kind of things in advance. And depending on how your house is set up, you may not want to put it in the garage.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Depending on your situation.
And those are the principles. Those are the very principles. Because once again, what I said is, it would be almost impossible for us to cover every scenario. But the principle is access even when the power's off. So now you have to make the assessment that I have a generator that's going to kick in, and that generator is connected to this thing, and this thing. It's not connected to this. Or I don't have a generator, so I need to keep this where it's most accessible. But it goes back to having multiple kits. Multiple kits, because the one that I have in my car, I might not be able to get to it. The big tree that's right on the side of my yard might have fallen on my car and I can't get to it, right? But the one that I have in the garage, I can get to, because we just happen to have the garage open before the power cut out. Or the one that I have in the basement or in the backyard. So I will say, this is our principle, overkill.
Yeah.
Overkill. Be as prepared as possible.
I just wanted to add something really quickly about water. If you had read the East Bay Express, it was a couple weeks ago. There's a big issue with raw sewage in Oakland, including hundreds of thousands of gallons leaking into Temescal Lake.
Oh my gosh.
So in the event of an earthquake, I'm imagining that's just going to get worse. So think about that when you buy a filtration system. There may be raw sewage in the water.
Yes. And once again, I'll go back to principles. You want the best filtration system you can find. You want the highest level of filtration that you can find, and if you can't get that, then you are assessing based on that, right? So if you know you have this straw, which has a reasonable filtration capacity, but not as much as this, or the larger charcoals, right? So then you make a competent decision based on that information. You said that this, because what we will show at some point, the crank radios, you will be getting updates. You will be able to hear what's happening. So you should get reports that this has happened. There's a sewage leak into the water system, that type of thing. And then you know that this is not the best one to go with, right? Yes. Yes. So, I also want to say, if you have information in this room that is helpful to this room, volunteer that information. We act as a community when we come in here and do things, right? Because once again, it's difficult to know everything that is to know about this unless this is your profession, right? So, if you have information, like the information that was just volunteered, please, this is an ego-free room. Give it.
Well, I know that in regards to boiling water, it should, to kill any bacteria, viruses, microorganisms that might be present, it should ideally be at a rolling boil, full boil for at least a minute, you know?
I just was going to say that I've kept mine. I bought one of those aluminum trash cans, and just a small one, but kept it in the backyard away from everything, so it's not going to get hit by a building crushing it or
open spaces.
And sealed tightly so squirrels and stuff can't get in there. Anyway.
Just to go back to the water thing one more time, I think you had mentioned that, like boiling will kill bacteria and viruses, but there might be physical hazards in the water that definitely won't take care of, or if it's contaminated with any sort of chemicals or anything
so,
I
you know,
didn't hear what she said.
pardon.
Can you repeat what she said?
We couldn't hear.
About the steel, can you repeat what you said about the steel trash can in the backyard, basically keeping it in an open space
I
and
was
keeping it
just
sealed?
suggesting that sometimes, I mean, these are okay, but they have to be in a covered environment. And I kept mine in I just bought at Home Depot, you know, those old aluminum trash cans. One that's sealed tight with the sides that come up and clip it, kind of. And just a small one, and filled it with, you know, everything, and then I would change it out every few years. But it's just something that can be by itself, away from trees, or it's not, doesn't have to be in a building.
And so that same principle, putting it in containers. You can get Rubbermaid containers, big Rubbermaid containers. We used to get the trunks. They don't hold up so well after a while, but you can get more expensive ones. I don't even know if they make those things anymore. I haven't seen trunks, but you can put these in those containers.
The raccoons in my backyard.
They'll eat them.
They eat through the wood on the back porch.
A lot of times, if you have bags, those bags are better for indoors. So this
Yeah.
bag would be better for activities of business inside your home, whereas outside, when you're dealing with the weather, it's a different animal.
I've seen those, at the little silicone packets that come with the shoes, the little tiny packets, and you can throw those in your kids' shoes wet.
Indeed. Okay, so we're gonna put some water in the kit. Getting hungry just looking at this. A little bit of food. I want to reiterate what Charles said. Especially if you have children, a lot of times they say it's good to have some comfort foods. A little candy maybe, or something that's sweet. A lot of times that will help, how we say, up the morale, which is really important. Once you lose your morale, survival is more challenging, right? Okay.
Dog food too. Dog, cat food, your animal.
Oh, and we're going to get into that as well, because if you have pets, you have to consider that. And pardon me all for 1 second. All right, so after the food and the water, the next thing, experts say it's really important to have a solar/crank-powered radio, flashlight, and cell phone charger, right? Batteries are good, they have to be replaced, they die. But this, you put out in the sun, it can charge up. Or if you had to, you could manually crank it. And how Tara said too, once everything is calm, you're gonna want to go on the radio and hear announcements of what's going on.
So these are solar chargers that have a USB port in the back. They have a USB port in the back that you can plug in cell phone chargers. Right? This is one size. This is an 8-cell, I think this one is, and this is a 14-cell. So they come in different sizes. Typically, let's say with the 14-cell, you can try to charge a computer, but it may and may not work. But both of these have USB ports on them. So, solar.
After the hand crank or solar radio, they recommend some kind of tool. This is a 4-in-1 tool. It's made out of aluminum so it won't spark and it won't rust. And you can use this tool to turn off your gas, turn off your water, to pile on the door, or even to dig through debris. It's a 4-in-1 tool, a 4-in-1 survival tool.
Question about the turning off your gas.
Yes.
Could you do that with can you do it with a regular crescent wrench, or do you need a specialized tool for that?
You should be able to do it with a crescent wrench, and a crescent wrench is sometimes stronger. Yeah.
And then what we're going to do, right now we're dealing with before the preparation. After that, we'll deal with during the earthquake, and then finally we'll deal with after the earthquake. And then after the earthquake, we'll deal more with how to apply certain things, how to do certain things. So right now, we're just trying to see what goes in, but at the same time, too, all the questions and comments are really good. And the next thing would be survival blankets. For survival blankets, there are different options. There are these, and I've gone camping and we've used these when it's pretty cold, and if you wrap yourself around them, it will keep you warmer than not having. A lot of times, you even put them on or a coat on top of them if you were moving. But they also have blankets that are a little bit more, heavy duty, right? And like we said, this depends on your situation. A lot of times when you're preparing, you want to just get started. After a while, you can add more things, right? There's some folks that say when you go shopping, if you spend $100, $10 should go towards preparedness stuff. Or once a month, or every 2 weeks, add something else, right? But survival blankets, they say, are something that's a must-have. A small tent. In the event that you have to be outside. We're in the city, so a lot of times your car may be your tent, or an awning or something. But if you have one of these, if you're somewhere where you cannot find shelter, suppose you have children and you've got to be outside in elements, this will keep the rain off you and keep you a little warm. First aid kits. It's the same thing. You can make a simple one for yourself. You can buy a small first aid kit, or you can get a first aid kit that's more extensive. A lot of times these first aid kits are for minor things. So depending on how much knowledge you have or whatnot, you can add things like for trauma. You can add trauma kits to your first aid kit. And in the future, we'll have somebody here and we'll dive deeply into first aid and safety. The kits, a lot of times, they'll have information. When you have spare time, you should read it. Next is a multi-tool, or they say a 12-in-1 tool that will have pliers, different types of screwdrivers, whatnot. That's something that you would need. An extra can opener, and those tools have cameras on them. You may need to make fire, right? For several different reasons. There's all kind of options. There's waterproof matches. A lot of folks back in the day would get a regular match and dip it in wax and let it dry and use that as a waterproof match. But there are also different ways to make a spark and maybe put fire. And you have to find which one works for us, and we're going to try them all. They have the magnesium spray where you put the magnesium off and then make a spark, and the magnesium will catch. But then they also have different kinds of tinder that light very easily.
And remember, all of this will be up on our Community Ready Corps page. This is being recorded, so it'll be there, and we will be releasing a series of videos that are more compartmentalized and go more into depth about these things. So even your questions is going to inform what we put in those videos. Maybe force us to go do more research, but our objective is, once again, is to learn and give you what you need to be safe. So anything you ask us, we're going to incorporate that into our videos.
They say you should have an extra pair of clothes. You can get some pants, the whole outfit, wrap it up real tight, put in some plastic, because depending on how you're dressed when the earthquake hits, you may need to change. Really important to have some kind of work gloves, right? Because after the earthquake, you want to protect your hands. There's going to be debris, broken glass, so this is major. Like I said, the gloves depend on your own preference. Really important, you want to have some loose change. A lot of folks say at the minimum, $50 in small denominations. You want to have some quarters, right? You may want to have backup ID. You may want to have a list of contacts, phone numbers, and important people that you would want to contact, right? And we put that in there. I put it inside a plastic bag to keep it all together. You want to throw a pin in there as well. Right? If you have children, now diapers, baby food, right? So like we said before, depending on your situation, things will be a little bit different. Sturdy shoes. You would not have the shoes inside the kit, but they recommend that you keep shoes under your bed. So if you're at home and the earthquake hits it at night, you don't have to walk around and it'll help protect your feet from glass and debris.
Yeah, don't wear these like I got on.
There you go.
Right? Don't wear flip-flops.
The same thing would apply for your car and place of work. If you have a kit at work, you could have an extra pair of shoes at work, extra clothes. In your trunk, you have an extra pair of clothes and an extra pair of shoes in your trunk too. So that way, whatever you have on, in the event it hits, you have some shoes that are sturdy.
A good example, a friend of mine was in the Twin Towers in 9/11, and she got out, but everything was shut down in New York. There was no transportation, there was no cell phones. It was very difficult to communicate. And so she walked from the Twin Towers location after she had been triaged. She walked to Brooklyn, and she had work shoes on. And to this day, she thinks if I had just had sneakers in my desk, or if I had just thought to buy a pair of sneakers somewhere to have. So it's, this is earthquake stuff, but it's also if some major disaster like that happens, to have that kind of footwear, because we'll be walking.
Absolutely. And that's why we want to go back to this concept of principle-based thinking. Principle-based thinking. Because once again, there's so much nuance. There's so much it's circumstantial in so many different ways that if you understand the principle, then you can determine how to facilitate that principle of being thoroughly and persistently prepared. So that means that if you are about being prepared, you're going to think, these are all the places that I am on a regular basis. So we don't have to say have one for your workplace, your car, your house, your friend's house, your partner's house, any of those. You know that based on the concept of being thoroughly and persistently prepared. So that means everywhere you are, you need to have this, because the nature of earthquakes, but disasters in general, they don't call you and say we're coming, right? So it is being prepared in every circumstance. Yes.
She had a really great point that I want to say again.
Okay.
After your map, when we had high school colleagues who had to walk 30 kilometers after an earthquake, and at night, and it's difficult to find a map. And we're going because everybody always looks at their phone for maps. So after we put paper maps in our kids'
So now we're getting there, but thank you. A roadmap. You want to have a roadmap for the areas that you're in. There's no GPS. If it's dark, a lot of times if you're under duress,
You need maps.
right? You need maps. Indeed.
With that in mind, my dad still has lots of old road maps from back in the day of places that aren't on the map anymore, like East Germany, Czechoslovakia,
Indeed.
Updated maps.
Yeah.
Updated maps.
That's real.
The borders have changed over time.
Right on. That's a very good point.
I mean, even if you're just driving and you lose your signal, this has happened to me, and then
That's right.
we're on the GPS, and it's like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, remember maps?
Yeah. And so with that said, it's a skill to reading maps.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Which most of us have lost the ability to do so.
Right.
So, in preparation, that may mean that you have to get familiar with dealing with paper maps.
Yeah.
And I want to add one quick thing as well, the compass. There are items these days that have compass that will tell you what is the direction of the north side and the south side.
Mhm.
That also is very important.
Using a compass. Yes.
Indeed. Dust masks. Really important, and there are different levels. You have industrial dust masks, You have the regular ones, and you can actually buy oxygen. They have small, I don't have them here, we don't have them today, but there's fires a lot of after an earthquake. And a lot of folks will not get injured from the fire itself, but smoke inhalation. So, or if there's just dust outside and debris, if you have a mask, it'll help you be able to breathe better.
Is there a certain kind of mask that you have to buy? Because when we had the fire in Santa Rosa, they said like, we can use this mask compared with this mask because it wasn't enough like effective. So,
When you go to, particularly at Home Depot, you want the highest level. This one is medium, but it tells you that it will give you the highest level. Yes.
So I know that like the masks that are rated N95 or P95 will filter out like I think it's 95% of like certain particulate matter that just but then there's other ones like there's a P100 or that will filter out certain like oil-based particles that the N95 won't filter out. So anything from like smoke or like smoke from like burning plastic or burning rubber or whatever, the N95 kind of thing wouldn't necessarily filter that out, whereas the P100 will filter out like paint fumes, smoke, chemical fumes, like things like that. So those are, yeah, if you can spend the extra $10 or $20 to get one.
And in the event that you forget those details, you're looking for the highest filtration. Right? Anywhere you go, you're asking for the highest level filtration mask. Because, and I appreciate those details, I do. But I always want to say that some of those things you might not remember, you might not know. That's one of the reasons why we say deal with principles and keep it really simple. So when you go in, you don't necessarily need to go in and say, I need this type of charcoal filter. What is the highest level filtration that I can get, right? What is the highest level filtration mask that I can get? That's what you're looking for.
Probably a really smart thing to invest money in.
Absolutely.
If we're talking about beyond earthquakes, like, chemical attack or something,
Absolutely.
it's probably a very important item to put money into.
Yes. And you can go online and you can get, if you're really thinking ahead, you can order the best possible product you can find. And we do suggest, do your research, do comparative analysis to make sure, just as you did, to make sure that you're getting the right thing, right? Because nowadays people will sell you anything, right? So they'll tell you it's something that it's not. So do your due diligence.
It's good to have glow sticks because they last up to 12 hours. And if you have glow sticks, then that way you don't have to use your flashlight all the time. You bend them, and you hang them up, and they'll give you light in the dark. We all know duct tape. Duct tape has so a lot of folks that say, man, top of the list, right?
Top of the list.
So much for duct tape.
I just want to add to that like clear packing tape is also like well, let's just say like I need to like tape plastic or other material onto my car windows, and the packing tape like actually like outlasted the packing tape outlasted the duct tape, and was like also a lot more weatherproof, like as far as being able to survive through hot weather and also rainy weather. So just like another thought, like while throwing like a roll of tape in there, that plastic packing, that clear plastic packing tape is super durable and long lasting and really strong.
And I'm glad you said that too, because they said to put rope in your kit, but a lot of times we always heard rope, twine, and string. So maybe it's good to have a couple different types of tape or a couple different types of rope, so that we have a little more flexibility. Toilet tissue, sanitation bags, and the chemicals you can treat. Because you have to go to the restroom, right? These same kits, how we said before, double as toilets. Once everything is out, you put a plastic bag inside the kit. When it's inside the bucket part of it, after the bucket is empty, and you can put this on top, and now you have a makeshift toilet, and then there are chemicals inside to treat the waste. After an earthquake, a lot of them say that you should not use your toilet, because if the water lines are damaged, then things can come up through the pipe, and so they will say that until you're sure that your water lines are not corrupted, try to not use the toilet. Okay, so that right there covers what we did. We compiled a list from a lot of things that we heard or read different experts say. But like we said, this is just a basic, small survival kit for 72 hours. And how Tara said again, principally, there may be some other things, and if I didn't say medication, that should go in there. If there's a certain type of medication that you need, it should be in there. A lot of times folks will have backup eyeglasses, right? So anything that's personal to you and your family, it should be in there as well. Okay, now that we have dealt with the kit for the first 72 hours, the next step is acquiring additional things outside of your kit. And these are two things the same way. You keep them where they should be. The first thing, again, is water, right? And there are different ways to secure water. Anywhere from big 55-gallon drums, they have 30-gallon drums, and these drums have a pump. You will put in a water preserver. This preserver will keep the water usable for 5 years. So you want to think about some kind of way to have extra water. We know that a lot of times you're prepared, but you got friends, family, right? So it's a situation where having more than you think you need is often a good idea.
Yes.
All right. After water, next again is food. You will have kits, a kit in your car possibly, a kit where you work, a kit in your home. But you want to also start storing up food in those same places that have extra food. So same thing, there's a food with a 5-year shelf life, but then anything that's non-perishable. You can start stacking up the canned foods, or you want to have stuff that's ready to eat. A lot of times we always heard folks say, like, if you get a gang of beans and rice, can you cook that, right? So you want to think about food that's non-perishable, but it's ready to go. Okay, and next thing, we had the 4-in-1 tool that was in the kit, but there are a lot of other different types of tools. There's small tools like this, like small fishing tools if you have to dig or approximately open. And then there's everything from larger axe and a handheld axe or a sledgehammer. So if you had to like get through a door or what have you. So you want to think about other tools that you may need and have those on deck as well.
Crowbar's good to have.
Crowbars, right? Because that small crowbar, that handheld one, is not going to have the same amount of leverage as a bigger, stronger one, right? So you may want to, in the same way you have a larger storage of water, you may want to have some real tools, and with those tools are the same. You want to know how to use them. You want to practice work with those tools. As a matter of fact, I remember reading what they were saying is, folks will have this type of food, but because they've never eaten it before, they don't. Their body's not used to it. So they were like, you should have some Pepto-Bismol and some things to help your stomach, right? Yeah, because if you don't have that, you have a whole different diet than what you're used to.
Yeah.
Non-perishable fruits, raisins, granola bars, whatever. This kind of stuff. You want to make sure your stomach is safe, because if you get sick, now that adds a level of difficulty. Pardon me for 1 second, you all. Okay, so we went through that. Fire extinguishers. A lot of times, fires will break out during an earthquake or after an earthquake. So you want to make sure you have at least 2 in your home, right? One in the kitchen, because a lot of times fires will start in the kitchen, but then you will also want to have a fire extinguisher at another place in the house, maybe a garage, maybe a shed out in the back. There are different kind of fire extinguishers. They have small ones that can go in your car. So you want to investigate that, but make sure you have these and you know how to use them. Fires follow earthquakes. Make sure they're maintained. Make sure they're full. Okay, and the next thing. In terms of preparation, there are all kind of straps that you can use to strap large appliances, bookshelves, cabinets, file cabinets, flat screen TVs. It doesn't take that long, but these kind of things can save your life, because you do not want to be in your home and things are falling on you. These straps will minimize that possibility. There's no guarantees, but they will help. They have larger steel straps to strap your hot water heater. The codes say that they have to be strapped, but if you haven't got one in a long time, it may not be strapped. So in your home, you should check your water heater. If it's not strapped, you want to make sure you strap that up.
There's also, I don't know if you have it there, but there's also straps that you can strap across your like high shelves of your bookshelves. If you have high shelves, like I have like the first 3 strapped, because if they fall, it'll fall on, that. And then, but the lower ones I don't, because it's not that far to fall. But
they even have putties and gels that you can put on the bottom of small things in your home to keep them from falling down. Please.
Is there an expiration on fire extinguishers?
I'm not so sure.
Yes.
there is.
Yes, I know this. I do some volunteer firefighting sometimes, and it's ideally you should have them. Someone with experience should take a look at them once every 5 to 6 years, roughly.
And they have a meter that lets you know what condition they're in.
Now, the next part in terms of preparation is having a plan for your family, or a plan for yourself and your family. Probably for 1 second, you all. The first thing, a lot of times in schools or where we work, they may have fire drills or earthquake drills. If they don't have them in the schools where we work, you want to push that issue and help start them. But at the same time, they suggest that you do them on your own too, and with your families. And they say at least once a year. I kind of feel that, maybe once every couple of months would be better, because a lot of times under duress, it can all go out the window, right? So the more drills, the better, right? It's good to have at least 2 exit plans for every level of your home. If there's a fire or things fall down, your front door may not be accessible, your rear door. So you want to map out some other exits, windows, what have you. If your home has 2 or 3 stories, then you have to have escape plans for there. So if you live in a building where they have a fire escape, you want to know how to use it. You want to make sure they're maintaining it. At the same time, too, they have ladders. And we don't have an example here, but we'll have one the next time. How many of you all have seen the emergency ladders that you can set up real quickly and go out the window? All right, those ladders are great, especially if you have children, right? Yes. And what you would do when you do those drills is you would teach them how to use them. You want to keep those ladders where they're accessible. They should be right by the bed, by that window that you tend to use them for. or in the closet in that same room. And like we said earlier, keep these things separate. You don't want to have an emergency and you got to dig around to find stuff, right? These things can possibly save us from injury or even death. We take this very seriously, and you want to make sure you deal with them in a serious way. It's good if you have a family or loved ones to have predetermined locations as meet sites. And maybe two of them, right? One on this side of town near the school, and one on this side of town near where you work. Where in the event you are separated, you can't get to your home, we all know, okay, we're going to meet at this tennis court in this park. And you should have your meet spot in a place that you've put a little time and thought into where it should be, right? You want to have a meet spot where it's not by the trees and the power lines. You want to have a meet spot that's easy to get to, right? And make sure everybody knows where it is. That pretty much covers the section on preparation. Having the items you need and having a plan on how to use them. So before we get into the during an earthquake, are there any more questions or comments in terms of the preparation part? The next step is during the earthquake. If you're inside, once the shaking starts, you want to quickly and calmly take shelter under a sturdy desk or table. And we want to keep in mind that mantra: drop, cover, and hold on. As a matter of fact, can we all say together? Drop, cover, and hold on. Okay?
I could act it out too.
There you go. We appreciate that.
Hold on to the tape.
Hold on to the
thing
table
that you're under.
Exactly. So if the shaking started and I drop down, by cover, they mean I'm going to cover my head and neck, and I should hold on to the table.
Okay.
The reason being is, in a serious earthquake, the table can move.
Yeah.
The floor can move. And if you're not holding onto the table, you could look up.
Out from top of you,
Yeah. So drop, cover, and hold on if you're inside a home. If you're inside and there is no table, what they suggest is to drop and cover in a corner by the interior wall, the inside wall. When you find a corner part to drop and cover, you want to make sure you're avoiding places that have mirrors, windows, large, heavy appliances, right? Because those can fall on you. So if you're indoors and the shaking starts and there's no table or desk to get under, you want to find if possible, the most clear corner by an interior wall, and the same thing, cover, right? There's nothing to hold on, so you would just cover yourself. And I'm using these notes, y'all, to make sure I don't forget anything. Please forgive me. If you're inside, do not, and the shaking starts, do not run outside, do not run room to room. More folks get injured from falling and flying objects than the building actually collapsing. So stay put, do not run outside. We said earlier, and the folks just came in, there's an old myth about getting in the doorway. With modern architecture, the doorway a lot of times is no stronger than the rest of the house. And if there's a door that's swinging back and forth, that can be very hazardous. So the doorway thing, we're going to toss that out. Okay. Next, if you're outside and the shaking starts, what you want to do is find a clear space that's free from tall trees, power lines, and definitely exterior walls of buildings. So if you're inside, you would find a corner and drop and cover. But if you're outside, do not go near the exterior wall of a building, because a lot of times the exterior walls are the first to fall, right? So you want to find a place that's clear to the best of your abilities. And like we said, you could be in a situation where these things don't exist. So we're giving it out there, but we want to look above the principle. You want to be careful of what's above you, all right? If you are driving while the earthquake begins, what you want to do quickly and calmly, you want to pull over in the same kind of area, an area that's free from power lines, large trees, and exterior walls of buildings, right? Then what you would do is turn the car off, and same thing, you would cover your head and neck in the car, right? Never park under freeways, overpasses, anything like that, right? You want to find a place that is as clear as possible.
So what do you do if you're somewhere where you really can't get to a place like an urban environment and there's wires everywhere and buildings
Exactly.
with glass? What do you, I guess you just find the very best
What
place
I would
that you
do,
can.
if I was driving somewhere and there's traffic and there's nowhere to go, I would have to cut the car off and just cover right there. So the best situation is if you can really fast. An earthquake could last a couple of seconds, 30 seconds, even a minute or more than a minute.
Yeah.
The best thing is to find a place to park that's the most safe place, but if that's not available, you may have to just stop where you are or park wherever you are and just cover. Please.
What is the best way to escape from a car if you are accidentally on the bridge and you fall in the water?
Oh, wow. Yeah, the things that we're doing, the things that we're going over will give you a better chance of not being injured or staying alive, surviving. But there are no guarantees. There are some situations. I remember when they had the earthquake here some years ago, the whole Cypress Freeway just collapsed, right? So we're talking about a real tragic situation, and I don't want to be negative, but yeah, it's dangerous overall. There are no absolutes, right? So, please.
I've been told that the seat car, what we put our head on when we sit on the car, there's a way to pull it up and will help you to break the window.
Oh, okay. I can possibly that. Now, I do know for a fact that like a lot of tactical folders, a lot of knives, and I carry one every day. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you your comment. A lot of times, it's good to have a culture of trying to be prepared as possible all the time. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a little small first aid kit in your backpack. There's nothing wrong with having a small flashlight on you, a multi-tool on you all the time, because you never know, what's going to happen.
I can maybe answer a little bit the question about if you're in the water with your car. So you want to make sure if you have the presence of mind, you're able to stay calm. Once you hit the water, then you immediately remove your seatbelt. That's the thing that people generally tend to forget. So you make sure your seatbelt is off. You always take care of yourself before you take care of your family, because you can't help them if you can't escape. And if you need to break the window, the area and the corners of the window are weaker. So if you use the little window tool, if you have your glove box, you can tap it in the corner of your window and it should break quite easily. Never wait until you think that you need to wait until the pressure equalizes. It's never a good idea to wait. You need to escape the car as soon as you can.
Thank you very much. There are certain tactical folders that have a pommel on the bottom that has a glass breaker, and they have a knife inside the handle that you can use to cut a seatbelt, right? So, first aid. Is there somebody that knows about defense? So a lot of times, just like in life, we're social and we depend on each other a lot of the time. And find groups amongst yourselves and figure out how you can work together. Because a lot of times, if I know that all of my folks have stuff stockpiled, if I can get to mine, I know where to go. And the same for them. All right? And then, too, a lot of times, each one teach one. today I learned a lot from you all's questions and comments. So this is helpful for everybody. All right. We do not want to panic. And that's easier said than done, obviously, right? Because it's scary. The sounds, it could be explosions, walls crumbling around you. You're not panicking, but other folks are panicking. But as much as possible, you want to try to stay calm, right? If you can, you want to keep folks around you calm. Acting frantic and panic only make the situation worse. A lot of folks say if you're under a table and you're holding on, you're covering, it's good to count. 1001, 1002, 1003. And their idea is that by counting, it may help you take your mind off of what's going on and help keep you calm. A lot of times with a martial arts trainer, doing certain kind of training where you're testing yourself and getting used to fear and dealing with fear will help you out. As much as possible, stay calm and keep folks around you calm. I remember that we used to say in our training, even if you have to lie, everything is going to be all right, y'all. We're good. Even if it's not, right? You won't tell the truth, oh, y'all, I think it's right. So stay calm and try to keep folks calm. All right. And the last phase is after. If you're inside and you're under a desk or table, once the shaking stops, if it's safe to move, you want to quickly and calmly leave your home. Because there could be an aftershock that will cause additional damage to your home. Please.
Sorry, about how much later would an aftershock happen?
There's no way of knowing. It could be some seconds later, it could be a minute later, even an hour later.
Right.
So, but that is a good point in the sense that if there was an earthquake and after it's over, an hour or 2 hours later, you may want to relook at your kit and restock it, or we don't want to get in the mentality that we're good now, it's a wrap, right? After you have left your home or left the building that you're in and you're outside, you want to find an area, same thing. To the best of your ability is free of power lines, tall trees, and exterior walls of buildings. The next thing you want to do is you want to check yourself and the folks around you, your loved ones, and if anybody's injured, you want to use your first aid kit and deal with those injuries. If the phone lines are still up, that'd be a good time to call loved ones and let them know you're okay, or call to check on other folks. After a while, you may want to now check your home. So the first step will be to check for gas leaks. If you go by the gas line, if you hear hissing or blowing sounds, or if you smell gas, you want to use your tool and cut the gas off at the source. If you cut your gas off at the source because there was a problem, a little while later, do not cut it back on your own. You want to have a professional come and cut it on because they will know if it's safe to do that or not.
And these are things that you should not wait until an emergency to find out about and where they are, how to do them. Once again, we live in an information age. You can find out almost everything you need to know by watching YouTube. That's just the reality. But there are PG&E, there are different resources to find out where the gas lines are, how to cut them off, what to do in the case of an emergency. I say that because you don't want to wait until it happens to get familiar with it. So as we said, with all of these principles, practice these things. You may want to do drills where you're saying for the next 70 so hours, the next 24 hours, we are going to act as if we are in crisis mode. Reason being, because once again, you perform like you train.
The Same thing applies for your water. If you feel there's been sewage damage, you want to cut the water off the source too, because if there's been sewage damage, that can come into the home, right? And if you cut your water off, what they say is you shouldn't cut it back on if you have a professional looking at it. Lastly, after an earthquake, a lot of times there'll be fires. So if there's any small fires, you want to put those out. If there are chemicals that are flammable that have failed, you want to, as quickly as possible, clean those up to prevent fires. So we have gone through step 1, preparation. We've discussed during, and we've discussed after. At this point, we definitely would like to hear any more comments or questions. Over here on the side, this is some stuff from FEMA. You are free to take one if you'd like. But before we end, I definitely want to see whether any more comments or questions.
I don't know if you guys spoke to this, but there's a program in Oakland called CORE, which stands for Communities of Oakland Responding to Emergencies. And it's free. It's all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and you will learn a lot about everything that y'all taught about, as well as one of the things that I really took away from it was this thing called cribbing, where you use leverage to lift things that, if it's a big heavy thing that fell on somebody, and that's a really excellent thing to know. And so I would recommend, you can just go to I think the fire department actually does these classes, so you go to Oakland Fire Department. It's a federal program, so every city has it, but Oakland calls it something different. It's called CERT, C-E-R-T, Community Emergency Response Team or something like that, but that's CORE, C-O-R-E.
So do you have where that happens? Do you know where that takes place at? Do they have a website, Facebook page, anything like that?
You can go to the website, you can Google CORE. I took the training at the where the fire department training place is.
Okay.
And so it was great. I really recommend people do that.
I just signed up for that, so you go to Eventbrite, I think it is, and then you just put CORE. You can sign up for free.
CORE, C-O-R-E?
Yeah, abbreviation.
How Tara said, this is going to be an ongoing process. This is just a introduction. So we're going to keep this going. And we definitely appreciate all you all's comments, questions. And if there's no more questions or comments,
I think we have one in the back.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know some geologists are creating a great app called Tendler.net, and you can check your landslide and liquefaction risk. It's really cool filters. You can install the USGS data, and so you can plug in the address where you live or where you work, and it will show you your landslide and liquefaction risk.
Can you say that again?
Tendler, T-E-M-B-L-O-R.net, and it's by a guy who's a USGS geologist for 30 years.
And you guys said that you would be like making kits and selling them. So do you know like when that will?
We're working on it now. We're trying to find the best wholesale rates and the best
like,
people to go through.
So like for 2 people, like
Yes.
the
Yep.
levels you were talking about.
Yep. And
Okay.
so we will be producing videos around this. And like I said, once again, today was designed to give an overview of certain things. Because it's a lot of information, like even how to use these is a whole process, right? How to put the pumps in, how to get water out, how to actually put enough in, all of those things. As I said, that each one of these things is a whole discussion in and of itself, right? So we could do a whole series. We could fill this 1 to 4 with just water,
Right.
with just food. So once again, it was meant to give an overview, but we will be coming back with videos. We will be bringing you other experts in this because our objective is to make sure that you have the information, period, point blank. What we don't know, we want to bring somebody to give it to you because the goal is for you to be prepared, period, point blank. This is not an egotistical endeavor. It is for you to be prepared. Ashley.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. I've learned so much today. I know for a fact I'm going to go out to like probably Home Depot and buy some buckets right now. But I'm also thinking about this in like the context of like my neighborhood, and I was wondering if there's a chance that I mean, obviously when you guys put out videos and stuff, maybe I'll like share that with like my like my neighborhood listserv or something. But would you like be open to in the future possibly doing like a training like at like a house like neighborhood?
Yes. Yes.
Just wondering if you already have a website out and what that address is.
We have a website, but this information is not up yet.
Okay.
So we're in the process of updating it based on the need. So people have been asking about this. So once again, there's a lot of information we've done for years around emergency preparedness and all of that, but a lot of things have changed. So we're updating our information. We will be putting that website up, and we will be linking it to other resources.
Do you think? Thank you. I'm definitely interested. I live actually 2 blocks from here in on 23rd Ave. Like we just bought our building together collectively, so I'm definitely interested in staying in touch about kits and water stuff. We've had like small conversations about being a water hub in the event of an emergency. So there's that. But I just want to know like as far as like who's the best person to contact, like if we want to like find out in the case of an emergency as like a whole building, because it's like 4 storefronts and then some residential units also, about like how we can like shut off gas lines and water lines and how to like find all those things and then have a workshop around that kind of readiness.
So we'll be doing more, but the core training, I'm sure they go into some of those things, right? PG&E is a resource for how to cut those things off. So go to the standard sources, right? PG&E has, if you go to their site, there's information there on how to deal with that. If you call, somebody will come out and check your lines, all of those things. And when they come out to check the lines, you can ask questions. What is this? Where is this at? So there are different ways to do that. But I would suggest the core training.
So this is definitely like the route that feels like best for me, but I'm wondering whether or not like, and what you're thinking around this is in terms of like the upfront expense of all of this is terrifying for a lot of folks. Well, they'll just like shut down because they're in day-to-day survival mode anyways, and like if you have any aspirations for having like a lessing like anxiety producing, like here are some gradual ways that you can build up like canned foods and that kind of stuff that might be resources that can be shared in the community.
And thank you for that input. One of the things that Che addressed slightly was buying pieces at a time, right? It's once again, it's why we say the principle is the most important thing. It's understanding the concept. If you understand the concept, you can figure out based on your circumstances how to facilitate the practice. So, for instance, if you see these things, and we've talked about certain things that need to go in the kits, certain things that are essential, now you begin to assess, this is what my economics will permit. But this is what was said was essential. Let me get these things first. Or I need to save up this much, and on a monthly budget, I can get these pieces. But also community cooperation, right? So I know a lot of us are familiar with working together in co-ops and things of that nature. So that's also a way, because you can buy a lot of this in bulk. And that's one of the things you should look for. Look for wholesale retailers that you can get these things, because some wholesalers will send it to you on crates, right? So you can work with 4 other people to combine and buy a crate of a thing, and you can disperse it that way. So there are other ways to approach it.
But I just wanted to add to that, like water tablets, they're really cheap. And, I mean, I had the Life Straw too, but I'm in a Desert Survivors group. That's all anybody ever takes. I mean, those are all really fancy and everything, but I think that for $1.99 is just as good, and I think you can get, I mean, you can get like instant oatmeal, it's cheap, and just canned beans, and I think you can do a pretty low budget.
And I was along the same line when you were asking that question. I remember a long time ago when we used to do preparation, we were saying you can just start with this, how much water, some matches, and a multi-tool, and I'm gonna start with that right there. And then, how Brother Tara said, if you have a Rubbermaid bucket, every chance I get, I'm gonna throw a bottle of water in there, a can of beans, a can that I can peel the top off, not a can I need a can opener. So you can start like a piggy bank and just throw in. Somebody told me a long time ago that the little kits that you get at Upper Levels that has the plastic fork and the plastic knife and the napkin, that's a survival tool.
Trader Joe's has them for free.
Please.
Yeah, so you guys mentioned that before, the like kind of layaway option, which I really like appreciate, like straight up making like monthly contributions, starting with some really basic-ish, and like just building it, I think can help. You're talking about the anxiety issue or whatever. And then I think what you guys talked about too, like to each according to the need, to each according to ability, like having kind of that philosophy of like kind of helping each other, kind of that cooperative community model.
And now she said that, this kind of an important part of preparation could just be starting with some basic exercise. If every day you stretch a little bit, maybe do a little jogging, some push-ups and sit-ups, that's something that will help you in an emergency. You could start writing down the important contacts, friends and family, and get that laminated to where it's going to last. Start to do studies. Get a book and start reading. So start where you are.
When you were talking about making phone calls to loved ones, what I also heard is you can change your answering machine to say, I'm good, I'm safe, I got out, because a lot of times everybody's trying to call and they don't answer jams. And so that when people calling you worried about you, they're like far away that you can't get hold of, or know you're safe.
Please.
Even as we're mentioning or, starting to create the packages, sometimes like small things like baby wipes or something, I mean, like for yourself too, because of like hygiene. Because I don't know regarding the water, like when it would be okay for you to take a bath. Because it goes back to the water tank that you showed us, that it's like, who would need, like the tank of water that big, or where would you store it? Because it's only for 72 hours, is what I was thinking, the preparation kit. But something like that would kind of go away if like folks start needing a bath or something after like, because those things are essentially, it's like we kind of need, we'll miss that, like something that'll be so significant. Like if something bad were to happen.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? Well, I appreciate it. I've learned a lot. We're going to have this going to be ongoing. We want to thank all of you for coming out. There's actually no rush. If you all want to talk for a little while amongst yourselves, if you have some small questions, please ask them. Anything up here is for you all to take. And once again, thank you all.
Thank you.